So with the start of Season 2, it seems that there is a very easy way to farm any delves on tier 11, and I would recommend you do this sometime soon because there is the possibility that this gets nerfed because it's so incredibly easy right now with this specific setup to just farm tier 11 delves, even if you haven't geared up much in Season 2, or even if you have a character that isn't super geared from Season 1. And being able to farm these tier 11 delves is much more lucrative than it was in Season 1 because now in Season 2, going and doing tier 11 delves can also earn you a certain amount of gilded crests per week. I think it's 21. So you can also start to get the higher tier of crests just by doing this, and it is incredibly easy. Now, the biggest hurdle to doing this farm is you're going to need to be playing a class that can be a healer. And again, you don't need to be super highly geared to do this. And it's generally not super intensive healing, but you are going to need to be playing a healer to do this because we're going to be using Brand's new tank spec to be able to do this. His new tank spec, when you go in there as a healer, is absurdly strong and makes every delve very easy. And there's a handful of reasons as to why this is so incredibly strong. First off, it seems they just over-tuned Tank Brand a bit. His kind of base damage when not doing anything else is pretty crazy. There's also just the possibility that that damage is so crazy because you are playing a healer with only a Tank Brand, so they have to make his damage super, super high. But then you tie in a few of his new mechanics on its tank spec, and his damage can skyrocket even more. And there's two main mechanics you have to care about when you're a healer when trying to get the most damage out of Bran. So he has two new effects you're going to want to pay attention to. One of them is this pulse that anytime you heal Bran for any effective healing, meaning he actually has to lose health and you actually have to heal it, it will just pulse damage around him based upon how much healing he gets, and this will do quite a lot of AoE damage. Now, what this also means is that you're going to want to overpull compared to what you were doing in Season 1. Even on tier 11 delves, you're gonna want to be pulling a lot more enemies because Bran will keep pulling them to him and instantly taunt them, so you don't have to worry a ton about the enemies just stopping and killing you. But the more enemies you can get on Bran, the more damage he's going to be tanking, and the more you can effectively heal him to do those pulses of damage that's just going to be putting out quite a lot of AoE damage. And also, Bran's strongest ability is basically this frontal gun blast that does a ridiculous amount of AoE damage, so you also want to group up enemies just to allow his normal abilities to work even better. Now, his second effect that you want to keep your eye out for is a buff to his pistol damage. Now, Bran's basic weapon is a pistol that he'll just shoot enemies with. It's kind of like his basic attack, but it is considered a different ability. But anytime you heal Bran with any amount of healing, no matter if it's effective or not, so you can keep overhealing him, it'll keep stacking up this buff, increasing the damage of his pistol shots. And it's a pretty big damage increase, so depending on what healer you're on, you can buff this a lot more than other healers. Like a Restoration Druid that can just put a row of dots on Bran can stack this up very easily and continue to keep it stacked very easily. I mean, Resto Druids are probably going to be able to use Bran the best out of any other healer, but most healers do have some other hot they can put on him or some other way to heal him a lot more consistently to keep trying to stack up this buff. So no matter if Bran is taking a bunch of damage or not, you're going to want to keep any hots you have on him pretty much at all times to keep this buff stacking. And when you're in combat, you're also going to want to keep healing him very consistently with a lot of different smaller heals to keep that buff going as well. And a mix of all of these different things is going to make Bran do a ridiculous amount of damage. Healing him when he takes damage to pulse AoE, continuously healing him to keep upping his pistol shot damage, and then grouping things up, allowing his other abilities to work even more effectively. And I would definitely recommend you progress through all of the delve tiers and get to tier 11 delves before you start to do any of your bountiful delves, because doing those tier 11 delves will give you the higher tier of crest. You'll just get a lot more loot in general, and it'll actually make these runs more easy and not super slow when compared to even really low tier delves, because again, if Bran is actually taking damage like he will in tier 11 delves, you can just keep healing him, which will pulse more AoE damage. So the more damage Bran takes, the more AoE damage you're actually going to be able to get him to put out. So doing the highest tier of delves actually helps Bran to do a lot more damage when you're actually healing him. And like I mentioned, I would definitely recommend doing this earlier than later because there's a decent chance this gets nerfed, because this is incredibly strong, especially if you have healers that aren't highly geared. I've heard of people doing this below 610 item level because realistically, you're not that worried about getting hit by any of the enemies. You're never going to get meleeed or anything like that. You're not really worried about you pushing out a bunch of damage, even though I would definitely recommend trying to do as much damage as you can while doing this. That will just add a bunch of additional damage and just speed up how quickly you can complete these delves. But realistically, even if you're like 600 item level, not much is going to be destroying Bran so much that you're not able to use some cooldowns and keep him alive, even in tier 11 delves. So it just makes everything about these delves significantly more easy than it's ever been before. And because of how the scaling works, because you're in healer spec, enemies are generally just gonna have a lot less health. So this is definitely something I'd recommend doing, especially if you have a lot of healer ults or ults that can heal. This is a very good way to go and gear up really early on in season 2. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.